B2C? So virtually everyone here is business to business. Excellent, okay. So Nimbus was a business to business company. So let's just summarise it relatively quickly with some numbers. 3 founders who were there throughout the full 14 years of growth. We had 14 years consecutive growth. Got to about 120 people, 17 million in revenue. It was selling shrink-wrap software and web-based software to large corporates. So we were up in the operations manual for Nestle, for Chevron, for Unilever. So we built up a reasonably good client base there. First 7 years, we grew it out of cash. Not because we wanted to, it's just because no one would fund us. Same situation, yeah? So it's like, well, in that case, if you don't be able to fund us, then we'll get clients to pay for it. And actually, when I went out to the US, that was quite interesting. They said, well, how do you fund it for the first few years? And I said, well, we got clients to pay for software. And they went, wow, how does that work? The VC approach in the US is very different, which is we'll bootstrap it with 6 million of funding and we'll go from there. We grew it up, after about 7 years, we got some funding from 3i, which was great. But by that time, we actually got some revenue, which meant we didn't give the whole company away. About 4 years later, we put a bit of money in just because we saw a bit of down in the market in 2008, and I wanted to put some cash on the balance sheet, which was a very sensible move because I did that just ahead of when it got unpleasant. So closing a funding round then was actually quite dicey. But then in 2011, we took the view which was, whilst we'd had staff out in the US for some 4 or 5 years, what we discovered was the US big companies would not buy in any sensible volume from us unless someone had committed to the US. So yeah, we had 10 staff out there, that didn't matter. So I went out with my operations director and the family, and almost like turning a switch on, suddenly it went, oh, you're committed to the US, therefore we'll start buying. And I found it absolutely staggering how simplistic it was. I never met a client, I never went to see some clients, but because I was out there, the kids were going to school in Marin, we were in San Francisco, suddenly it all moved on. We were out there 7 months, we intended to be out there for 3 years. I had money thrown at me. It was almost embarrassing, just trying to fight off funding, because we wanted to get to a point where we actually had a reasonable set of numbers. I got to situations that actually, no, we're ready to take some funding. We had a $15 million round with another 200 to follow to go and acquire some companies. So I brought that back to the UK, to the board, because I wanted to go and get that signed off. And I got a phone call that afternoon from a company who we'd never met, who'd been following us about 3 years, and said, we'd like to merge the companies. I went, hang on, we're doing 17 million, you're doing 900, merge. Okay, I think I understand what this is. So we agreed, I went back to the US, took 3 weeks to agree a price, 4 weeks of due diligence, and they wrote us a cheque. All cash up front, no lock-in, free to go if you want to. Which is why you can't follow that. You can't go, can I do that please? Yeah? Part of this was about, yeah, we built a business, we weren't looking necessarily for an exit, but it came along because, yeah, we had a strong client base, we were growing, and clearly TIBCO had got wind that we were about to raise some funding, and therefore we were likely to become more expensive. So with that as a backdrop, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I think worked well over the course of that 14 years. If that makes sense? So the first is culture. We actually had an approach called PLU, people like us. We refused to work with people we didn't like, so that included customers, partners and employees. And in fact, anyone here from Accenture? I actually used to work for Accenture. Accenture were our worst clients, because of course they always knew better than us. Yes, we installed the software for them, but they installed it on a different server, wouldn't agree, they wouldn't do it the way we suggested because they knew better, and of course it wouldn't work. We spent ages chasing around, and eventually I got the situation and said, tell you what, how much did you pay for the software? I'll write you a cheque, send it back. And I went, oh, okay, we will take you seriously. But we had an approach which we wouldn't work with people we didn't like, we wouldn't work with partners we didn't like, we wouldn't work with customers we didn't like. We had a team of, the 5 of us who ran the company actually enjoyed each other's company, which was actually really good, because actually there were some bad days and some good days. I sailed competitively with one of the other directors, we used to go skiing together, actually we liked each other's company. And for many of you, that may not necessarily be the case. You're working in companies where you haven't necessarily chosen to work with a bunch of people who ultimately become friends. But one thing, if you are thinking about getting a partner in a business, it's worth thinking about that actually getting a partner is way, way, way more difficult and higher risk than actually getting married. Yeah? If you get married to someone, it's relatively easy to get divorced, I'm told. I haven't got divorced. It's a rather expensive activity, but apparently for those people who have been divorced, they say it is worth it. Yeah? But the way to get divorced, apparently, is you sleep with someone from who is not your wife, or not if your wife is sleep with someone of the other sex, and suddenly there's a divorce there, and what happens is you divvy up everything you've got between the two of you. If you've got a business partner and you decide that you fall out with them, they say, that's not a problem, we'll split up. We think the company's worth 3 million, I've got 50%, you write me a cheque for $1.5 million, and I'll be out of here. See the problem? So therefore it's way, way more important when you start thinking about business partners, actually picking someone who you think is going to be there necessarily for the long haul, rather than just the person who had the idea and rushing straight into it. I was on a flight just recently, and I was sitting next to a chap and you get talking, and we ran out talking about business, and I found that he'd recently got divorced, having only been married 6 months. And I went through it. How on earth do you work out what's yours and what's hers after only 6 months? And he said, he was an American, he said, it was real easy. I turned up, everything on the drive was mine, everything in the house was hers. That's a thought on culture. The next one is strategy. I think when I talk to a lot of people, they say, our strategy is we want to sell the company within 3 years, or 5 years, or 2 years. That's not a strategy. That might be an exit strategy. That's different from a business strategy. I think people get the two confused, or they get mixed up. What is a business strategy? Which is, what are you trying to achieve? Is it level of growth? Is it focusing on a market? Is it getting a product to market? Whatever that business strategy is. I can't tell you what that is. That's your job as founders and executives. That's different from an exit strategy. The exit strategy might be, these are the companies who might purchase us. But when you start mixing the two up, so you start making decisions which are business decisions because you're trying to tweak it for an exit strategy, then I think you're actually causing yourself a number of serious problems. Nimbus, yeah, we knew who the potential exits were, but we had no control over that. They decided when they wanted to buy us. We weren't putting ourselves up for sale. So therefore, the difference between an exit strategy and a business strategy, you need to keep the two separate. We had a chairman for a while until he became a non-exec and I then became chairman. But if any of you are actually planning to become chairman or non-execs, he had a couple of really useful bits of advice for us. One, he said, during the downturn, he said, a couple of bits of advice for you, Ian. One is if you could sell more than you spend, that'd be great. Thank you for that, Bill. And then the other one was, you need a long-term business strategy, but unless you've got a short-term survival strategy, the long-term business strategy doesn't make any sense at all. So again, it's that balance of what do we need to do now, but actually how do we make it through the day? Particularly when I think that probably virtually everyone in the room is not sitting there on $15, $20, $30 million of funding like the US company do. So that idea of actually what's the strategy? That was the next area. The one thing I think which made a significant difference, particularly around exit, but obviously in terms of just growing the business, was one about how you build a brand. Most of the people in the room said they were business to business. So building a brand, most people think, well, we actually need to go and get some PR because that will get us in the local papers, it will get us in the industry press. My apologies to the PR agents if there are any in the room, but actually that is absolutely not what you want to do. Sorry about that. Actually, if you look in the dictionary, you'll find that analyst relations comes before public relations. The analysts, the Gartners, the Ovums, the IDCs, the industry analysts, they talk to way, 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 way more customers and influence those customers way more than one line in the FT where it misquotes what you do. The second thing is they talk to all the acquiring companies. So when they evaluate, say, TIBCO, and they said to TIBCO, by the way, you're very strong in this area, but you're very weak in this area here called business modelling, TIBCO went, well, who should we buy? And they went, well, we really like Nimbus. Okay? And you may go, well, that's very simplistic. That is how they work. So analyst relations is a critical part. And again, if you're not starting to engage the analysts, it takes 1, 2, 3 years to start to build a relationship with them. An analyst relations doesn't mean every time you meet them, pitching them on, by the way, can I tell you about the latest product release or the latest bit of functionality? It's starting to get to know them, start to swap gossip with them, start to read their blogs, start to think about how you work with them and help them, because they need research, they need insights, they need something interesting to tell their next client. So starting to build those relationships together takes a while. It doesn't involve necessarily spending huge amounts sponsoring their conferences, but actually being a customer, being a client of them, particularly Gartner. Right? Again, back to technology businesses. Who here is a Gartner client? That'll be nobody then.
Sorry, we got brother.
Oh, sorry, one over there.
That's brother, by the way.
But okay, so if you've got a business which is a business-to-business sale, and in the technology space, and you're trying to sell in the US, if you're not a Gartner client or Gartner don't understand you, you do not exist. The Americans will not even talk to you in any sensible level. Again, Gartner does $1 billion of revenue, and unfortunately it is massively influential. It's one of those ones where you need to start to cultivate them. Forrester to a lesser extent, IBC over them, and so on. So that's one way of building brand. The other way of building brand, which is really neat, is writing books. You'd be amazed. Books are brilliant. Okay? If you write a white paper and you give it to me, I go, that's very interesting, that's marketing bollocks, and I'll put it in the bin. If I write a book and give you a book, you go, oh, it's a book. Who here has ever thrown a book away? No, you'll give it to a charity shop, you'll give it to somebody else. You can't possibly throw a book away. There's something special about a book. And if you write a book well, and it doesn't talk about the product too much, but it talks about the principles, it is massively influential. We wrote one book 7 years ago. We printed a pallet load at about £1.44 a book, and we gave them all away. And it's amazing. I actually had someone literally a month ago email me saying, I've read the book and I bought 7 more for the rest of our team. Brilliant. How many people go, actually, I've taken your white paper and I'd like to buy some more to give to the rest of my team, please? It doesn't work quite like that. So again, writing books actually is marketing's dirty little secret. You can do a hell of a lot with books. If you think about the Dummy's series, those sorts of books, that principle works really, really well. The other area is blogging. Again, I guess most people here must be writing a blog, yes? Few, okay? If you're not, then from a business perspective, if you can't do it, find someone inside the company who is good at writing. And the deal with the blog is it doesn't need to be very long, 5-10 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, but the deal we had was, if we got to Friday and we hadn't written one, I will write a blog, okay? Is anybody going to read it? Probably not to start with. I looked at the stats for the first 2 months, and I had like 3 people reading it, 5 people, 2, 0, 0. So not even my mother was reading it. But actually over time it starts to build and starts to build. My blog's now had over 100,000 hits. God knows who's reading it, but people go there and read stuff and it just keeps on chipping away. The analysts read it, the analysts retweet it. It builds that brand and reinforces and reinforces and reinforces. Not difficult to do. It's one of those things you've just got to do. Chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, reasonably consistently. So from that perspective, actually building a brand is actually about lots of little things done consistently, done regularly. Rather than, I'm afraid, just throwing money at a PR agency and saying, build me a brand. Because it doesn't work quite like that. Business and consumer, completely different. I don't know very much about business and consumer. I'm about to learn because I've just invested in something called Less Admin, which is a B2C play, which is software for helping consumers manage all their assets and projects related to it. So I'm managing your house, then the new garage or the new kitchen, or managing your yacht and racing at Cowswick. So we're ready to launch that. We'll see what happens with that. We are going up a massively steep learning curve in terms of talking to everybody I know who's done anything successful in the business and consumer world, and the one word they come up with every single time is distribution. Who is it who's got lots of your customers who you can tag along with? So there were 3 things which I think worked really, really well for us. One was actually having a culture which was fun to work in and encouraged great people to go and work for us. People who really shouldn't have worked for us because we were too small a company. The second was actually having a very clear strategy about what we were trying to achieve, so it helped us through the dark days of going, oh, we're really doing the right thing, how are we going, shouldn't we all go and get proper jobs, all the stuff that I'm sure all of you go through every so often, yes? And then the last thing was actually how we build a brand. And that brand building has probably added the most value to the company over the course of time. So you just one insight. That idea, Gartner said go and buy. Gartner said go and buy Nimbus. Did they know what we did? Sort of. But they really liked us. So they sort of knew what we were. They sort of knew what we were to the level where they actually made us BPM Cool Vendor of the Year, and they put us in the Magic Quadrant. But if you asked them to describe exactly what we did, they were about 80% of the way there. But they liked us, and we were the right company. And that is hugely influential. So that's sort of the good bits. What were the things I would have done differently? Well, the first was about marketplace. When I'm still a vice president at TIBCO, and when we signed our service agreement, they said, you realise that you can't start, if you leave the company, you can't start another BPM company within 2 years. I mean, that's great, you can put 2,000 in that number if you want, because there's no way I'm starting another one. We picked a market which was just horrible. But we sort of fell into it, some guys came up with an idea, we sort of went with it, and we never did the proper validation of, is there really a market that's accelerating? And over the course of the 14 years, a number of times we said, why are we doing this? We've got a brilliantly talented tech team, engineering team, we've got some great sales guys, why are we doing this? And we went, I'm sure the market will take off, we've just got to finish this off. And I think if I had my time again, I'd probably, after 2 years, we would have taken a really hard look and said, let's evaluate the market and work out whether we really ought to be doing this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, go to America. Go to America way earlier. I know it's very nice sitting in Manchester. It's way sunnier in San Francisco, and they've got shitloads of money. Give you a quick idea. Who's heard of Lululemon? No. Okay? All they do is they sell yoga equipment. Yoga mats, yoga clothes, nothing else, online and offline. So they sell them in shops and they sell them online in North America and in Canada. Revenue this year? I have some guesses, please. Got 100 million on my left here, I've got 100 million on my right. 100 million there. Got 50, that's a lower number. I'm not sure that works. Well, a higher number.
1 billion.
Sorry?
Billion.
A billion?
Yeah.
Higher, please. This year they did $1.37 billion selling yoga mats and yoga equipment. Yeah? How big a company could you build in the UK selling yoga mats and yoga equipment? The market is just that much bigger, which is why the VCs are prepared to invest so much more, because the market's bigger. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy out there. So less admin, the way we're building it, yeah, I'm going back to the States, when we're building with no idea about what revenue will be. We're going to grow it. At some point we'll work out what the business model is. And everyone, including my mum, who asks me probably every other day, but how are you going to make money here? And the answer, I don't know. But we're going to build this thing to a point where we can fund it for the next 1-2 years if we need to, and we'll grow it, and we'll work out what the answer is. And people say, that's not a sustainable business model, that doesn't work. No, you're right, it didn't work for Google, Amazon, eBay, PayPal, Eventbrite, SugarSync, drop my stop now. Yeah? There's a bunch of people out there who built it in a certain way and it works. I'm not suggesting you can copy that, because in the UK we don't have that infrastructure, and we certainly don't have that number of consumers. It doesn't work that way. But I think if I had my time again, I would certainly make sure I took an executive out and got out to the US way earlier than 11 years in. And what was the last thing I was thinking about that I would never do again? Focus. Focus. Nimbus, we never really knew what we did. It was business process mapping, and you could map any business process for any industry. And over time, we sort of meandered our way going, it's compliant industries. So if you have to write down your business processes, we'll be focused on that. But that still meant we were food, pharma, oil and gas, and financial services. That's not focus. But the problem is, by the time we'd learnt about focus, we already had 10, 15 employees, we already had salary bills, and we dared to try and focus, because if we got it wrong, we'd kill the company. With less admin, this new startup, we said we're going to focus. And we took about 30 different marketplaces, and we looked at them, and big spreadsheet, and we said, right, how close are we to supporting that functionality? How viral is it going to be? How much are they likely to pay for this thing? And we actually did an evaluation. And bizarrely, we came out with racing yachts. People who've got a racing yacht, that's their asset. And the project is racing at Cows Week or doing Key West or sailing World Championships. And people say, that's not a very good market. It's not going to work. Well, first of all, I don't need to make money out of it, to start with. I want to prove a principle. And secondly, there are only 9 million people who've got yachts in North America. So that's quite a big market. Yeah? And people going, but can you really build a huge business out of it? No, I can build a niche out of that. And then once I've done that, I can do people with second homes. And then I can do people who actually are critical ill and therefore need to write their assets down. And you can work your way out from that. Now, it's amazing what happens when you get focused. Suddenly, all your marketing activity is focused on that one niche. Suddenly, all the contacts you're trying to make are focused on that one niche. Everyone they know recommends you to somebody else. So, to reinforce that, Les Admin has sponsored one of the America's Cup yachts out in San Francisco this year. But again, very focused on what we're trying to do. Versus the situation we had with Nimbus, where we were spread so thin, we ended up chasing every different market. And every time we got to another market, the customers there asked us to put one more bit of functionality in. And the product just got bloated and bloated and bloated as we started working out, oh yeah, we'll support Dell because they want something over here. Oh, we'll support AstraZeneca because they need some bits and pieces. And again, the R&D guys got dragged all over the shop. Marketing didn't know how, the website just said we do stuff for people. Yes? So I was talking to a friend of mine who's got a great bit of software, and I said, do you focus? Oh yeah, we're definitely focused. We're focused on SMEs. No, Richard, that's not focused. That's not focused at all. So yeah, we're definitely focused on SMEs. And I was trying to persuade him to get a bit narrower. Focus on, say, technology SMEs or marketing SMEs. So, I don't know, it seems like a small market. And I think that's what you get hooked on, which is it's not a big enough market. It doesn't need to be. The market, make it work there, and use that as the springboard for the next one. And that will accelerate things. So there were three things I do differently. One is I pick my market more carefully. The second is that I'd certainly, if I was building an international business, I'd go to the US way more quickly. And the third one is, early on, I try and make sure I'm a lot more focused. So they're my thoughts. My final thought about all of this, though, is about running technology companies. It's actually rather like being a parent. The best days are way better than you could ever imagine, and the worst days are way worse than you can ever imagine. Yeah, is that true? And I think on balance, probably the best days are better than the worst days. And really just to finish off is that the fact that all of you are here building technology companies, actually this is about you. Obviously it's about the winners, but it's about all of you. The fact that you're prepared to be out there, day in, day out, building businesses and actually building the future. So actually, I applaud you all.
Thank you, and we'll have dinner now and then pick up afterwards. Thank you.